Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulihi kareem, wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Udu ila sabili rabbika bil hikmah wal maw'izatil hasanah, wajadilhum billati hiya ahsan. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. I welcome all brothers and sisters with Islamic greetings. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Meaning, may peace, blessings, and mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be on all of you. The topic of my talk is misconceptions about Islam. It is the duty of every Muslim to convey the message of Islam to those who are not aware of it. It is compulsory for every Muslim to do dawah. Dawah means an invitation, a call to the non-Muslims towards Islam. It is the duty of every Muslim that he invites the non-Muslims towards Islam. And there are various methodologies as well as strategies used by the Muslims as far as dawah is concerned. The most common strategy is whenever a Muslim meets a non-Muslim, he speaks 100 good things about Islam. Even if that non-Muslim agrees with all the 100 good things about Islam, yet he may have a few negative points at the back of his mind. He may say that, yes, I agree with all the 100 good things about Islam, but you are the same Muslim who is a terrorist. You are the same Muslim who is a fundamentalist. You are the same people who spread your religion with a sword. You are the same people who subjugated the women. You are the same people who marry more than one woman. These few negative points at the back of his mind will prevent him from accepting the beauty of Islam. That's the reason. Whenever I meet a non-Muslim, I ask him upfront, what do you feel wrong about Islam? With your limited knowledge, whether right or wrong, what do you feel about Islam? And he poses 3 or 4 questions. And in the past couple of decades, I have realized that the non-Muslims, they have 20 most common misconceptions regarding Islam. And when he poses these 3 or 4 questions, invariably these 3 or 4 questions falls amongst the 20 most common questions. So how do these 20 common questions arise in the minds of the non-Muslims? The non-Muslims, every day they are being bombarded regarding misinformation about Islam. There is virulent propaganda regarding Islam in the media. Whether you take the newspapers, the magazines, the radio broadcast stations, the television satellite channels, the internet, there is virulent propaganda regarding Islam. And depending upon how the media portrays Islam, these 20 common questions keeps on changing. The 20 common questions that were there a couple of decades earlier are different than what they are today. The 20 common questions that will be there a couple of decades later may change again. Depending upon how the media portrays Islam, these 20 common questions keeps on changing in the minds of the non-Muslims. Wherever you travel, these 20 common questions remains the same. There may be an additional 1 or 2 question depending upon the local surroundings and the environment of that place. For example, if you go to the Western countries, there may be an additional question that why Islam prohibits the giving and taking of interest. But the remaining 20 questions are the same. The first number 1 misconception regarding Islam in the top of the charts is regarding jihad. Today, jihad is the most misunderstood word regarding Islam. It is not only misunderstood by non-Muslims, it is even misunderstood by the Muslims. Many non-Muslims as well as Muslims think that jihad means any war fought by any Muslim for any reason, whether it be for power, whether it be for wealth, whether it be for land, whether it be for language, is called as jihad. Jihad does not mean any war fought by any Muslim for any reason, whether it be for power, for wealth, for land. Jihad is an Arabic word which comes from the word jahada, which means to strive, which means to struggle. So basically, jihad means to strive and struggle. In the Islamic context, jihad means to strive and struggle against one's own evil inclinations. Jihad also means to strive and struggle to make the society better. Jihad also means to strive and struggle against oppression. Jihad also means to fight in the battlefield in self-defense. Basically, jihad means to strive and struggle. For example, if a student is striving and struggling to pass an examination, in Arabic we say he is doing jihad, he is striving and struggling. Many people have a misconception that jihad can only be done by the Muslims. There are verses in the glorious Quran which says that even non-Muslims did jihad. It's mentioned in the glorious Quran in Surah Luqman chapter 31 verse 14. We have enjoined on the human beings to be kind to their parents. His mother carried him in weakness upon weakness and his weaning is in 2 years. Next verse, Surah Luqman chapter 31 verse 15 says that, but if your parents do jihad, strive and struggle to make you worship somebody else of whom you have got no knowledge, then don't obey them, but live with them with love and compassion. A similar message is repeated in Surah Al-Kabut chapter 29 verse number 8. We have enjoined on the human beings to be kind to their parents, but if their parents do jihad, strive and struggle to make them worship somebody else beside Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, besides Almighty God, then don't obey them. Here Quran is talking about non-Muslim parents doing jihad, striving and struggling to make their children do shirk, associate partners with Almighty God Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This jihad in Arabic we say jihad fi sabil shaitan, jihad in the way of Satan. What a Muslim should do is jihad fi sabilillah, jihad in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Most of the non-Muslims, including many so-called Muslim scholars, that translate the word jihad as holy war. Holy war, if you translate into Arabic, it means Harb al-Muqaddasa. If you read the Quran, if you read the Hadith, the word Harb al-Muqaddasa doesn't exist in the glorious Quran nor in the Hadith. So basically, as I mentioned, jihad means to strive and struggle. Jihad, one type of jihad is also striving and struggling in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is qital in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Jihad basically doesn't mean war. There are many types of jihad. One type of jihad is fighting in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we read the history of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there are many Quranic verses revealed in the first 13 years of his prophecy, all the Meccan surahs. And many a times in these verses, the word jihad was used, but never did the Muslims ever physically fight. But only when they migrated to Mecca, the wars took place. Yet you find that the word jihad has been mentioned in many of these surahs that were revealed in Mecca. For example, it's mentioned in the glorious Quran in Surah Al-Kabut chapter 29 verse number 89, chapter 29 verse number 69. Those who strive in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, those who do jihad in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we open the pathways for them. When this verse was revealed, there was no war at that time. It's also mentioned in the glorious Quran in Surah Furqan chapter 25 verse number 52. Do not follow the unbelievers, but strive against them strenuously with the Quran. Striving against the unbelievers with the Quran, doing jihad against them with the Quran means that you have to convey the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So here we realize that this misinformation, this misconception regarding jihad is there depending how the media portrays it. This word jihad wasn't a problem a couple of decades earlier. After 9/11, it came on the top of the charts. So depending upon how the media portrays Islam, these misconceptions arise in the minds of the non-Muslims. The second most common misconception regarding Islam in the minds of the non-Muslims is that Muslims are fundamentalists. What is the meaning of the word fundamentalist? Fundamentalist by definition means a person who adheres to the ancient teachings or doctrines of one particular subject. For example, if a person wants to be a good mathematician, he should know, follow and practice the fundamentals of maths. Unless he is a fundamentalist in the field of maths, he cannot be a good mathematician. For a person to be a good scientist, he should know, follow and practice the fundamentals of science. Unless he is a fundamentalist in the field of science, he cannot be a good scientist. You cannot paint all the fundamentalists with the same brush, that all are good or all are bad. Depending in which field the person is a fundamentalist, you have to label him accordingly. For example, if we have a fundamentalist robber whose profession is to rob, he is bad for the society. On the other hand, if we have a fundamentalist doctor whose profession is to save thousands of human lives, he is good for the society. You cannot paint all the fundamentalists with the same brush, that all are good or all are bad. Depending in which field the person is a fundamentalist, you have to label him accordingly. As far as I am concerned, I am a fundamentalist Muslim, and I am proud to be a fundamentalist Muslim because I know, I follow and I strive to practice the fundamentals of Islam, and I know that there is not a single fundamental of Islam which is against humanity as a whole. There may be a few fundamentals of Islam which the non-Muslims may believe is against humanity, but the moment you give them the reply, the logical reason that why these things are there, there is not a single human being who can point out a single fundamental of Islam which is against humanity as a whole. If we go back in history, we come to know that this word fundamentalism was first time coined to describe a group of Protestant Christians in the early 21st century. Earlier, the church used to believe that the complete message of the Bible is from God. These Protestant Christians, the Protestants, said that not only the message of the Bible is from God, word, every letter of the Bible is from God. If someone can prove that every word, every letter of the Bible is from God, then this movement is a good movement. On the other hand, if someone can prove every word, every letter of the Bible is from not from God, then this movement is not a good movement. When we read the Oxford Dictionary, the word fundamentalist according to the Oxford Dictionary means a person who strictly adheres to the ancient teachings and doctrines of any religion. But when we read the revised edition, there's a slight change. The revised edition of the Oxford Dictionary says that fundamentalist is a person who strictly adheres to the ancient teachings and doctrines of any religion, especially Islam. So the word "specially Islam" has been added to the revised edition. The moment you hear the word fundamentalist, you start thinking of a Muslim. The Muslims are fundamentalists, Muslims are extremists, and we Muslims we feel apologetic that no, I'm not a fundamentalist, I'm not an extremist. I say I'm an extremist. I'm extremely honest, I'm extremely just, I'm extremely merciful, I'm extremely kind, I'm extremely loving. Can anyone tell me that being extremely honest is wrong? Extremely just is wrong, extremely merciful is wrong, extremely kind is wrong. The Quran says that you have to be extremely honest. You can't be partly honest. When it benefits you, you are honest, and when it doesn't benefit you, you are dishonest. We have to be the extremist in the correct direction. We should not be the extremist in the wrong direction. And a Muslim should be extremist in following the Quran. It's mentioned in the glorious Quran in Surah Baqarah chapter 2 verse number 208. Udkhulu fis silmi kaffa. Enter into Islam wholeheartedly. You can't say partly. We have to enter into Islam wholeheartedly. And when we look at the media, they are attacking Islam, and we Muslims, we are feeling apologetic and we are apologizing. Why are we apologetic? We Muslims, Alhamdulillah, we have the best deen in the world, and it is time that we reply. It is time that we turn the tables over. With this I conclude. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.